Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday, it's Scotland, it's 1 p.m, and that can only mean one thing. It means it is a Force for Good's Saturday street stall, coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConaughey. On this auspicious day, 6th of June, for it was on the 6th of June 1944 that the Allied forces turned the tide of the war and hit the beaches of Normandy with great courage and with great loss of life, yet were to march on and prevail to victory. And that's a lesson for us all. In the face of such terror that these men must have faced when they were in the landing ships, knowing that there was a chance that they might not even get out of the landing boat, let alone get onto the beach, that they could be shredded. What incredible bravery that we can only imagine. We'll be talking about that later. There's lots that we want to talk about today, from face masks to kneeling secretaries, yes indeed, to street signs in Glasgow, which some misguided people want to replace and to pull down. Well, let's start with the first thing. And folks, if you're out there, please give us a wave, because we want to say hello to you. If you give us a wave, please send in any comments that you've got. Please send in any questions that you have for us. And we will do our best to answer them. So send in your comments, send in your waves, send in your questions. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is, of course, as we all have been talking about in the last few weeks, is the COVID crisis. And this is our 10th Saturday street stall. When this COVID crisis hit, we realised that we needed to keep our profile high, and the best way of doing that was to use the wonders of modern technology to speak to people directly in their own homes. And with the wonderful help of our team here at A Force for Good, we have been able to do that. We've also set up this week another platform on YouTube, which I'll tell you about later. That's called Union Views, and that's another exciting project that we've got. Again, getting the unionist message out there. So this is our 10th broadcast during lockdown. The way we're looking at it is we're probably just going to continue this forevermore. The Scottish Nationalists will be very happy to hear, no doubt, because there's so much unionism and pro-British stuff going unsaid that this is a great way of getting it said. So as I say today, the first thing, face masks. Now, don't you think it's very strange that just as the COVID appears to be going away, that the cases are lessening, they're ramping up the kind of totalitarian demands to do things like wear face masks. And this has not gone unnoticed by many of us. And there was an extremely good article in the Herald this week, an unusually good article, I have to say, from a fellow a good writer. And he's I don't think he's a unionist or whatever, but he's just a good commentator. And he pointed out just why is it that the people who are most keen on face masks of the SNP and their supporters, why is that? Is there something psychological going on? And we do believe ourselves that it is a strange phenomenon. What does it say about them psychologically and politically? Well, this chap in the Herald on the 1st of June attempted to answer that, and he made some extremely good points. And he said, basically, the more supportive of independence that you are, the keener you will be on lockdown. And that's true. We've noticed that. You know, people on the internet who are Scottish nationalists really getting behind Nicola Sturgeon's lockdown and policing it. And he says here that some of that might just be for traditional reasons, that they prefer like the state to tell them what to do. And especially he pointed out that the SNP itself demands complete conformity, uniformity, for the sake, as he says here, of the bigger cause. And the conformity, quote, has now become instinctual on any issue, including coronavirus. Government, party, country and self have all become conflated. And they will praise Sturgeon. They will praise Sturgeon and they will criticise Johnston, even though both of them seem to be doing almost the same things. But then he got to the nub of the matter here. And he said, what the most important thing in this whole idea, which nationalists love, is a kind of Scottish, and this is a foreign word here, gestalt, G-E-S-T-A-L-T, gestalt, I don't know, a collective identity and value system for which, naturally, the First Minister is the appointed spokesperson. The obvious thing to say to all of that is that there is no such thing. There is no particular Scottish identity or value system, but Nats love the lockdown because it bolsters the illusion that there is. Suddenly, all Scottish people are broadly behaving in the same way. There really does appear to be an us. And of course, what goes with an us? A them. And oh my goodness, did that send the Scottish nationalists on Twitter and Facebook into paroxysms of rage. Paroxysms of rage. How dare you say that about us? How dare a national newspaper? How dare a national newspaper even suggest such a thing? Don't you know you've got to get with the programme? Somebody even, a Scottish nationalist, even put out here, you might as well go the full Alistair McConaughey. Well, as Alistair McConaughey himself, I'd like to know what going the full Alistair McConaughey means, because I would quite like to try it. But seriously, they were upset about that. But as we've always said here, the Scottish nationalists don't like the media to take a position that would criticise them. Now, question coming in there, what is your take on the graffiti on our memorials after the BLM protest? Well, we're going to touch on the BLM process later. I can see some people here on Facebook saying that the Facebook is interrupting. I'm aware of that. I'm afraid there's nothing that we can do at this end about that. But I know that Twitter is working well. And so if you want to watch us on our Twitter platform, please go onto our Twitter platform. Now, I'm just going to continue on here on... And if you call me, of course, I can't answer if you call me on the telephone. But I'm going to continue on the Twitter, and I am going to just continue to point out how, for example, that the Scottish nationalists are the keenest on enforcing things, and it's almost as if we've got to wear these face masks because it gives them another opportunity to enforce things. Now, it's been brought to my attention as well this week that those who shout loudest, for example, in the SNP, for open borders, for free movement of people, they are also the ones at this moment, who will complain about even their neighbours going out of the house, or tourists coming in from the next town into their town. Isn't it funny how those who are the loudest advocates for open borders and who ignore the obvious dangers of their free movement policies are suddenly all angry about being overrun by the people from the next village or the people from the next town? And there was an example of that. There's I think he's an MP called Alan Smith, who's an SNP MP, and he said, "Stirling folks, can you email me or reply with pics and videos of trippers at the weekend overrunning us?" I'm looking to boost the pictures to media, thank you. In other words, he's looking to shop people from just outside his little neighbourhood for the sin of coming in to his neighbourhood. Now, this is somebody who normally would be completely for free movement, completely for world free movement from all over the world. Yet, this person is against people now coming in. Maybe he'll learn that there are reasons, you know, if he really believes in this, there are health reasons not to have free movement, whether that's perhaps during the COVID crisis or whether it is, in fact, the movement through international borders. Will he learn from that? Will he learn that things that we've been telling him all the time about the importance of having borders and having border control? And there's a very good a philosopher that I touched on last week called Frank Furedi, and he's got a new book about that exactly. And it's not out yet, but it's coming out, and he's laying down the importance of border control, whether it's during times of pandemics or whether it's just normally when you're trying to ensure people coming in and out of the country legally and in a proper manner. Now, what that ridiculous stuff that the Scottish National Party people have been doing, what else? Well, some of you will have seen that there's somebody called the Permanent Secretary to the Scottish Administration, although they call it a government. As you know, we don't go along with that language. Anyway, this Permanent Secretary, had an amazing mega fail on Twitter this week, and it was so funny to watch. And we wouldn't normally laugh at people, but when it's the Permanent Secretary to the Scottish Government who puts herself on the firing line like this, we did have to have a laugh at her expense. And she thought she would be very fashionable and very politically correct. And so she thought, for some reason, I don't know what got into her brain, but she thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go outside onto the steps of this government building here, and I'm going to take the knee, as they say, in commemoration or something of this movement, which is a kind of racist movement itself called Black Lives Matter, you know. Anyway, she thought the whole of Scotland would go, what a wonderful, stunning and brave gesture. Well, actually, the complete opposite happened. And of the hundreds of comments on her Twitter thread, nobody supported her. Everybody said, you look stupid, what are you doing, what's it got to do with you? And totally rinsed her. Oh my goodness, they totally rinsed her. And we looked, and at one point there was 359 comments. And one comment was supportive. One comment was supportive. And that comment, even more amusingly, was from somebody who used to be Tony Blair's political advisor. So yeah, she makes a stunning and brave fool of herself, and nobody supports her except Tony Blair's former political advisor. And we thought, you know, that's interesting here in Scotland, that we've still got common sense. We've still got common sense. And that's something to be grateful for, that here in Scotland, Scotland's a very politically correct country as far as the administrative structures are concerned. It's one of the most politically correct in Western Europe, and it's wanting to become even more politically correct. We'll talk about that another time, what with all these new hate laws or anti-free speech laws, basically, that they're bringing in under the guise of hate, which is not hate at all. So they're really trying to crush people with common sense here in Scotland, but the people, I think, will resist, because Scottish people are intelligent enough to know when somebody's trying to get one over on them. And so I thought, maybe the times they are a-changing, and maybe you'll find here in Scotland that people are not going to go along with this nonsense that apparently has infected the minds and the spirits of many of the people that we rely upon to make the laws or to keep the laws. So that was we called it the knee stunt mega fail, and that was the permanent secretary. And somebody said to us, what does the permanent secretary even do? Is she the one that answers the telephone and does the typing? And I thought, I don't think so. I think she's the one that does the shredding. Or at least she should learn to take proper minutes, because that seems to be things that are missing these days when we want to find out what happened in the Scottish administration and what indeed they are all up to. So, another thing that has been going on this week, which some of you will have been seeing, and which has been, it's just kind of ridiculous really, is as part of this whole thing that's going on, this massive provocation essentially, there's been people who have been saying that Glasgow is a racist city. As we know, and I'm going to keep talking and emphasising this forevermore. Basically, it's a great British city. It's a great city of the Union. It's one of the United Kingdom's greatest cities. It's not a racist city. Don't you try to put stuff up against us, because we will expose you for that. And if you want to do silly things like try to change street names, let me tell you something. These men in the merchant city in Glasgow, who are great men of their time, they're the city's founding fathers. How dare you attack them based on some notion of modern day, what you call racism? These men built Glasgow with their money. They built the streets. They built the architecture. They built George Square. Their money built the city chambers. Their money built the city that we live in. Oh, they gave back to this city 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. And if you, in your politically correct modern way, want to run them through the dirt, then we'll see you. We will make sure people know the truth, and we'll make sure people know what you're trying to do to destroy our great British city. Because we're not going to have it. Because these men, basically, the tobacco barons, were legends. Were they hard? Were they the sort of men that you would be a bit scared of today? Did they have a side that might frighten the snowflakes? Of course they did. That's how they ended up building Glasgow. They had that attitude, that alpha maleness, that energy, that determination to create a beautiful city. They built the city. They built the city, as we've just been told there by a good fellow there on Twitter. They built this city on rock. British rock. So they gave back to Glasgow 1,000-fold, and we will not hear anybody attacking them, because once you give in to these people, they smell the fear. And you know what? When it comes down to this whole sort of nonsense that they're promoting, like racism and so on, there's no redemption there. Okay, you can confess to the cows come home, you can self-abase on your knee, but there's no redemption for you. That's the thing. There's no redemption. So you don't even go there. You don't even go there. You just reject it. It's just stupid. And you know, these people are kind of racist themselves, if you accept that terminology, because we were reading an article the other day, and somebody had put a list of names of ostensibly black people that they should name the streets after instead. And I mean, one of these was like, well, two of them I think were American civil rights activists. Well, whatever you may think of American civil rights activists, one, it's nothing to do with Glasgow, and I'm sure they're perfectly interesting and reasonable and nice folk, but what have they got to do with this? And then another was, of course, this chap who started all this rioting in the first place, who's, from what we can see, is basically a criminal. So essentially, they were chucking in Rosa Parks, this like wee old lady in Alabama, with like an actual career criminal, and making them both the same because they both happened to be black. And another one was Joseph Knight. Now, Joseph Knight's an interesting character, and we've written about him before on Facebook. He was a slave who was demanding compensation from what had been his owner, and his owner, so-called, wasn't going to pay it. And it went to court, and a big thing about it at the time. And it's one of these court cases that came out. It was 1777. And it came out that slavery was illegal in Scotland. So it was an important thing in Scottish history. But I mean, Joseph Knight, who's no doubt a good bloke, he's got nothing to do with like a nasty criminal in wherever it was in America. You know, so why conflate all these people, these interesting characters, no doubt? Harriet Tubman from the American Civil War, Rosa Parks, these little old ladies doing the thing at a different time, with like Joseph Knight with George Floyd, just because they happen to be black. That is a racist thing to do. But you know, these white people that come up with that, they don't see it that way. You know, they're patronising, essentially. They're very patronising. Disgustingly patronising, actually. You know, oh, you're black, add you to the list. Yeah, because you're black, you know. It's ridiculous. White people don't think like that. At least I hope they don't. Well, these white people do think like that. They appear to generalise, throw everybody together. So that has to be pointed out. I don't know if anybody's pointed that out before, but that just occurred to me just as I was talking there, actually. Yeah, and just to show how degraded our Scottish administration is, there's somebody here called Ivan McKee, who's apparently an MSP. I know he's an MSP. I've seen him speak live, and he's one of these people, you're in the room and your stomach churns. Your stomach churns. You feel like you're in the presence of evil. And he wants a street in Glasgow to be named after George Floyd, okay? This Scottish MSP, SNP, MSP, wants a street in Glasgow to be named after some ne'er-do-well who unfortunately passed away as a consequence of an interaction with the police. And I thought, well, what's Ivan McKee's role here? And he's the Scottish Government Minister for Trade. For trade, okay, not for dog licensing, not for butterfly collecting. The Minister for Trade. In other words, the health of our economy is depending upon this person. We're doomed, basically, unless we can figure out a way to get rid of these people. And the best way, of course, of doing that is at the ballot box next year in Holyrood 2021, when we will have a chance to get some of these people out, and hopefully set Scotland back onto some kind of road to normality. So yeah, Scotland's Trade Minister calls for George Floyd Street and Glasgow's slave name streets to be changed. Yeah, in other words, he's just all wrong. He's just all wrong. There's no dealing with somebody like that. We don't get into a debate with people like that. We speak over their heads and we try to convince the normal people, of whom the majority are out there, definitely out there. Because the people who devolve, as it were, to positions of power in the present Scottish system really are not the normal people. They're the oddballs, really. They're the oddballs, and we end up being run by the oddballs. And some people say, well, we're to blame for that, you know. And there's truth in that statement as well. But we've got to watch what these people are doing, and we've got to know when their interests are not our interests, and when they are just trying to overturn the centuries of greatness here in our city in order to appease their own inner turmoil. And that's an important thing that I've noticed as well. You know, a lot of these people who get involved with these movements, they've got things going on in their own head. They've got torment going on in their own head, and what they do is they project this torment onto other people, and they make other people feel uncomfortable and worried and confused because the inner torment of somebody has been projected onto them. And I noticed that this week. When somebody came out and basically he was having a Twitter conversation with another SNP person, and I was just watching it, and he was talking about how despondent he was as a Scot, that we had all this so-called slavery in our history. And, he was like feeling that as if that affected him in a bad way. Like this inner torment crushing him. And I felt sorry for the guy. It's like, why are you letting that bother you, mate? What else is the problem? What else is our problem in your case? Because we Unionists, we love our lives. We love our identity. We love being Scottish and British. We don't have any torment about being Scottish or British because of things in the past. We understand the past is the past. There was good and bad, and we work to find the good, and we work to learn from the bad. And that's the way human beings are. So we feel no shame about such politically correct obsessions. We feel nothing but great pride in our British history. We love that. We love being British. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I'll write a book on this, if I was an American philosopher, I could get a publisher for it, but how Unionists are much more at ease with life than Scottish nationalists who are like in turmoil. Everything's not right. Everything has to be changed. Everything has to be overthrown. And that goes for all Unionists. It doesn't matter where we live or how much money we have or how much wealth or brains or anything. The Unionist people are much more well-balanced than many of these Scottish nationalists who are like all over the place in inner conflict, almost like an inner contempt for themselves. And I say to these people, if they're watching, there's something going on in your life. Let's see if we can work it out together, And what you need to do, though, is don't have a crisis of existence on these sorts of matters, okay? Don't be tormented. Be chill. Try to understand the nature of the reality that you live and have your being in the short time that we have on this earth. So yeah, that's just my every street stall. I try to reach out to the Nats. I try to help them. They're not happy in their Scottish skins. What an amazing comment from that person there on Twitter. And you know what? They're not happy in their skin. Quite literally, you could have added. Quite literally, I love that comment. That's such a great comment. They're not happy in their Scottish skin, and that goes for like quite a few whites who seem to have a conflict with literally their own skin covering, as if they could be like a cybernetic organism and change it into, the guy from Terminator 2 and become whatever he wants. But that's probably what they would fantasize about. Political correctness pushes false guilt and false privilege. Yeah, absolutely, says somebody there on Twitter. I'm aware that our feed on Facebook isn't picking up. I'm aware of that, so that's why I'm concentrating here on Twitter. Now, because of the connection, that is. Now, if you want to watch us on Twitter, go over. If you're watching on Facebook, you want a clearer vision, go over onto Twitter, which is working perfectly. So yeah, where am I talking about there? I mentioned that this BLM movement, it's racist in itself because it just lumps all black people in as if they're all just a great big generality, and it also lumps white people in as if they're all a great big generality as well, and it which is of course a wrong thing to do, and by their interpretation that would be considered to be racist. So what can we do when we are just watching these things? Because I'm aware that there are a lot of people who've watched the news this week and watched the news this weekend, and they're upset, and they do contact me and they go, Alistair, have you seen this or have you seen that? And It worries them and it bothers them and it hurts their heart. Of course it hurts their heart because they're under a form of psychological attack. It's warfare, psychological warfare. It hurts their heart. And it hurts, it's deliberately intended to hurt the reputation of our great nation, the United Kingdom. And if we're about anything, we're about the United Kingdom being a force for good. So the first thing you do is you don't fall for it. You know, as I mentioned earlier there, no redemption is on offer. So don't even try. Not that you should even do so, but no redemption is on offer. Confess all you want, self-abase all you want, but they're not going to be happy until you're dead. So, you know, just ignore all of that. That's just silly. Remember that most people are sensible. Most young people are very sensible, and they don't fall for this. You know, the people that you see on the television, they're just attention seekers. 18 to 25-year-old mainly. And they're looking for something to believe in. And people that age, you know, they want meaning in their life. They want something to believe in. And so if you come along with a false ideology that appears to give you some kind of moral standing, then they'll leap on that because they don't have anything else to attach themselves to. And so I understand that. We can understand that. But they are being misguided. But most young people don't fall for that. So do have faith in young people and do continue to have faith in your fellow man because they're good people. There's a lot of good people out there. Number 3, realise that the people at the top that promote this kind of stuff, you know, they've got things going on in their own heads. They're projecting their own inner torment upon the world and making the world thereby worse as a consequence. Unionists, we just generally don't fall for that sort of thing because we're much better balanced. But here's the real thing. If you want to really improve your mental health, take a tip from Morrissey. Because as Morrissey sings, I recommend that you stop watching the news because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel sad and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own. So stop watching the news. Some of these news programs are just like enemy propaganda almost. They appear to make good seem evil, and they appear to make evil seem good. And that's really bad for your mental health. So stop watching at least the mainstream news. And if you're on social media, then be careful about the extent to which you consume social media, because you'll see an awful lot of stupidity and an awful lot of horror as well on social media. So be careful about that. Choose carefully. Choose carefully what you watch and choose carefully what you allow into your brain, because you become what you see and what you hear. You often become that unless you've got a very strong inner ability to process things. So the mainstream media news at the moment in the United Kingdom and especially in the United States, most of the channels over there are corrosive. They're corrosive and they're toxic to the well-being of American and British society. So you have to stop watching the news, because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel small and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own, as Morrissey sang so correctly, so correctly. And you know, somebody, just to conclude this little part here, somebody sent us a message yesterday, a supporter who was in a really unhappy state with what was happening, and goes, I've deactivated my Facebook account for now. I'm reading and seeing things that are wrong and upsetting, and I waste too much on it. I need to detox. I'm so angry with what I've seen today. It's just not right. Accusing kids of racism by age 2, that I should be teaching my children about racism, making them feel guilty for being white. Will I F? On the scale of the whole world, white people are very much minorities, and not one person alive was involved in having slaves. Quite correct. So my children have friends of all ethnicities, and I'm not teaching them to act differently towards anyone regardless of the colour of skin. We're all the same. The only privilege from birth is being born into money. All people are in the same boat, whether black or white, and certainly in the United Kingdom have equal opportunities. And that's so true, 100% correct. The voice of common sense. I was so pleased to read that from a person who has definitely got their head screwed on correctly. And finally, what we should do and what we should encourage is to learn our British history. To learn it because, as we always say, the past informs the present, which creates the future. And we need to love our British history because some people hate our British history, and they hate it for their own internal reasons. And so, in that regard, I spoke in London in 2018, and I gave a speech called 15 Reasons to be Proud of the United Kingdom. Britain is what Britain is, and what it is needs no excuses. And that concentrated on some of the things which have brought us to where we are today and have brought us to where our country is, which is in a fundamentally good place, but which is being daily assailed by people who just want to tear it down and create goodness knows what in its place. So learn about British history. Go to aforceforgood.uk/blog. If you go to June 2018, speech about 15 reasons to be proud of the United Kingdom is in there. Have a look at it. We've also written other articles about the nature of revolutionary ideology, which we're actually experts on, so we understand the extent to which you can... we understand what's going on in the sense of revolutionary strategy. And we're not going to talk about that in this particular programme. So yeah, learn and start to understand British history and its nuances. Of course, it's good and it's bad, and as we always say, we learn from the good and we also learn from the bad, and we try to be better. And that's what life is all about. But we don't criticise our forebears. We don't criticise our forefathers. That's an attempt to undermine ourselves. We have to understand them in the context of their times. Revolutionaries are not interested in understanding people in history in the context of their times unless it furthers their particular agenda. But we take an open mind on it all, and we see the good and we see the bad, and we try to find out where the balance lies. And the balance usually lies somewhere in the middle, obviously. Okay, that's all I want to say about those sorts of things. I'm going to talk very briefly now about, this is our Saturday street stall. We deal with those people who come up and ask us questions. Now, a few points have come in here. Somebody's saying, it's been a strange week. It went from stay at home, we're all going to die, to we are all racist, so let's get out and have a riot. Yeah, indeed. And that's it. And isn't it ridiculous that Nicola Sturgeon's telling us all to wear face masks, and if we're going to go out, and not to meet people from the next door, or whatever the rules are these days. I don't keep up with them. But it's okay if you want to go out and do whatever in that way. So I'm looking around here. What other questions, other points have come in? Political correctness pushes false privilege and guilt. Yep, we've got that. Very good. How is it that Derek Mackay is, well, I don't want to go there. Right, yeah, what I was talking about is they'll come up and they'll go, well, if you're so sure you're going to win a referendum, why don't you want one? Well, do you know, that's not the way that you look at things. That's not how a general fights a war. You don't go, oh, we'd probably win, but so let's just do it. No, of course not. You have to weigh up where the power lies. You have to say who's got the grips of the propaganda, who's got the grips of the mouthpieces, who's got the grips of the media. What big guns do we have? Who's going to speak for us? Who's going to be our spokespeople? What resources do we have? Do we have the money? Do we have the lawyers? Do we have the media that side has got? What's the morale of the troops? how are the troops going to behave when confronted by massive state opposition, which is what would happen if the SNP started to promote a second referendum. We would be under the weight of millions and millions and millions of pounds of propaganda. So you look and you say, how are our troops going to behave when assaulted by daily opinion polls, false opinion polls creating false questions or stupid questions or negative questions or demoralising questions? You have to weigh up all the angles, because we will be subject to attack if there was a second referendum from the full spectrum. So that's the first thing you do. You look up, physically, a general looks at the field and says, where do we stand? And that's before we've even got into the psychology of it, because politically there's nothing for us to gain by advocating a second referendum. There's nothing for us to gain unless we can win it by a greater margin than last time. Because if we win it by a smaller margin, then what will happen is it will be game on for referendum 3. And also, we don't want to constantly call into question the legitimacy of the United Kingdom, which is what the SNP want to do. They want referendums all the time, calling into question the legitimacy of the state. Well, all that's going to do is undermine the state. It destroys its overall integrity over time. So we oppose referendums on a matter of principle, that you should not call into question the integrity of the British state. And thirdly, even if there's a risk, however slight, of us losing, then of course we're not going to get involved in that. So it's once in a lifetime, as Singapore there has said, once in a lifetime, and a lifetime is, what's that these days, 80 years or something, God willing. So no, we're not having it, and we will not stand for it, and regardless of what happens next year. And what's looking likely to happen is that it will be a hung parliament. That's what's looking likely, because that's just the way it's going now. As I said earlier, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to our new badge, which is our AFFG flag badge. Go to aforceforgood.uk/shop, and you can get this nifty little pin badge, which is red and gold rimmed. And also go to aforceforgood.uk/support, put in your name and email so that we can continue to speak with you. Now, we love our British history because our past informs the present, which creates the future. So this week in British history, today of course, 6th of June, on the shores of Western Europe, D-Day upon us. We mentioned that at the start. Somebody's sent in a message there. Thank you for speaking the truth in these weird times. Feels like the world's gone mad. No common sense. Yes, indeed, it does feel like that. And we're very privileged to speak the truth. We've built up this ability to speak with people now, and our organisation is going from strength to strength, and we concentrate, of course, on keeping the British Union together. But when people attack the moral integrity of our United Kingdom, then that's when we get upset, because we are a force for good. And people say, why do you call it a force for good? It's because we confer moral standing upon our nation, the United Kingdom. We see it in a moral sense, not just a political sense. We see it as fundamentally a force for good in the world. And so we hurt when people attack it, when they attack our moral sensibilities. Of course, we hurt, and we have to speak out in defence of it. On D-Day, from bringing in a Scottish angle here, it was the Scottish meteorologist Group Captain James Stagg, who was from Dalkeith, who chose the day, 6th of June. He convinced Eisenhower that the seas and the weather would be at optimal level when they had been planning on going on the 5th of June. He said, no, the 6th is the day to do it. That's the Scotsman James Stagg. 6th of June was also the day that John A. Mcdonald died. Now, John A. Mcdonald was the first Prime Minister of Canada, and he was a Scotsman from Glasgow. And in total, he served 19 years as Canadian Prime Minister, and he died in office on this day, on the 6th of June, 1891. And I mention him today as well, because he's one of these characters that the politically correct modern world can't understand and want to put out of history. He used to be listed on the Scottish Executive website as one of the great Scotsmen, but he was removed in August 2018 because one of these politically correct controversies came up. When he was in Canada, he encouraged what was called residential boarding schools, which nowadays we would think were not the appropriate way to deal with it. Back in the day, what these were trying to do were to integrate the Indigenous children in Canada, the native people. What's it they call them in Canada? They don't call them native Canadians, native peoples or something like that. He was wanting to integrate them into society, and so the children were sent to residential boarding schools. And from today's perspective, that could be seen as controversial, but back then it was just a well-intentioned effort to integrate such children into modern Western life and into the direction that Canada was going, which was obviously a modern Western industrial country. But no. These nuances were not considered appropriate, or at least nobody was prepared to stand up and defend John A. Mcdonald. So he has become a non-person in as far as the Scottish administration is concerned. But he's one of Scotland's greatest sons, first ever Prime Minister of Canada for 19 years. First Peoples, thank you, that's the one. First Peoples, yeah. So he was trying to integrate the First Peoples children into modern Western life. And it was a well-intentioned effort, but from today's position, we frown on that. On the 7th of June was born the child who was to become one of Britain's greatest engineers, John Rennie, born in East Linton here in Scotland. And he grew up to be the creator of London Bridge, the famous London Bridge. You know, the children's nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down. Well, it was John Rennie who replaced it. And in fact, he died before it was completed, and it was his son, John Rennie the Younger, who went on to complete it. So it was the family who created the London Bridge, which was then actually dismantled. This London Bridge was built in 1831, opened in 1831, and it was dismantled in 1868, and it now stands piece by piece in a desert in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, where an incredible man shipped it over and put it as the centerpiece of his new town, which he was building in Arizona back in the late 60s. And there's some good stuff on Wikipedia if you're interested in looking at that. McCulloch was his name, McCulloch of McCulloch's Chainsaws, and he was the first man. Most people build a bridge over water, but he was the first person to put water under a bridge, as they say about him. What else? 8th of June, that was the Galahad and Tristram were attacked on the 8th of June. So a horrific attack during the Falklands War, which killed 56 British servicemen and wounded 150. And we'll be writing about that this week. And we'll also be writing about the interesting 8 Hong Kong Chinese seamen who were killed during the Falklands War. And there was 4 of them during that particular attack. And 10th of June, happy birthday, Prince Philip. What a man. What a man. 99 years he's going to be on the 10th of June. And we extend our best wishes and congratulations to the Duke of Edinburgh. Happy birthday, sir. And on the 11th of June, Hammersmith, talking about bridges earlier, Hammersmith Bridge a truly beautiful construction. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's an absolutely gorgeous construction. It was designed by Sir Joseph Bazalgette, who also designed the London sewer system, which is still working today. Well, 11th of June, 1887, it was opened. And because it was so beautiful, right, the IRA had to bomb it. And the IRA have tried to bomb it 3 times, because that's what revolutionaries do. When they see something beautiful, it offends their evil soul, so they have to destroy it. And the IRA have tried to destroy Hammersmith Bridge 3 times, and 3 times Hammersmith Bridge has told them where to go, thankfully. One was in 1919, second was in 1996, and the third time was in 2000, just 20 years ago. You know, I spoke earlier about those who project their own inner torment upon the past, so they may try to make their own inner torment our inner torment, and thereby unsettle and confuse us. Well, that's what these people tried to do when they tried to bomb Hammersmith Bridge. So it was opened 11th of June 1887. We'll be writing about that this week as well on our Facebook page. Please check out our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All are called UK A Force for Good. And 11th of June, the Empress of Britain launched at Clydebank and unfortunately sunk, but no casualties, on the 28th of October 1940. And on the 12th, the Battle of Mount Longdon and the victory by the Parachute Regiment. I mentioned earlier that, and I almost forgot to speak about this, we've got a new programme on our YouTube channel called Union Views with Alistair McConaughey. And what this is projected to become is a formal interview programme where I will speak to people who are unionists and pro-British and who have got something important to say. And the first episode is out now. If you go to our youtube.com/UK A Force for Good, search for Union Views with Alistair McConaughey and you'll see the first episode. And if you have any ideas of people that to interview or to speak to, please do contact us about that. But it's going to be a platform, a formal platform for people to promote and talk about these sorts of union views, which will have a wide definition. If you're for the United Kingdom and you want to keep the United Kingdom together, then let's hear your union views. So check out the first issue on our YouTube channel. And massive thanks to the video editor who helps us with our YouTube channel, without whom we could not do this. And massive thanks to the people behind Facebook, our Facebook broadcast and our Twitter broadcast. Thank you so much, because we can't do this without you at all. We have a great team here, and we want people to stand up and help to join us and to help to fight the good fight, to keep the UK together, because it's a fight, it's a battle that's always going to be with us, because there's always going to be people who will try to take us down, and to try to take the United Kingdom down. And it's about who has got the power to run the race. And it's one of these races, you know, it never really ends. It's just about life. It's just about life, and always just standing up for the right things. And we encourage people to stand with us physically when that's possible, when we're in activities. But most people can't do that. But people can still help by supporting us, because we pointed out last week that the Scottish Nationalists have an organisation called Scottish Independence Foundation, and it's raised £165,000 for 130 projects, SNP projects, just from the grassroots. Okay, now, I mean, we are nowhere near anything like that, but we need to be. So if you can help us, please do. Please go to aforceforgood.uk/donate to if you think you've had value from this programme. But we really do depend mainly upon our union supporters. These are the people who give monthly, from anything from £1.15 a week, which works out over 52 weeks as £5 a month. Anything from £5 a month at our union supporters programme. So you can go to aforceforgood.uk/union-supporters. And if you want to pay in another way, if you want to pay by PayPal or go cardless, then go to aforceforgood.uk/other-payment-methods. But you'll see that all on our website, aforceforgood.uk, where you'll also find this fantastic little badge, our AFFG flag badge. Look along the top, it says shop. Click on shop, you'll see it. You'll see it right there. You'll see it right there. And if you want to roll with our crew, go to aforceforgood.uk/support. Put in your name, put in your email. If you have a message, send the message to us. And you want to look for the bit where it says sign in. And we'll get back in touch with you. If you love Britain and live anywhere in the United Kingdom or the rest of the world, you can help. Exactly. I mean, you can support if you're abroad, but you are an expat, but you want to give money to help keep the United Kingdom together. You can do that as well. Perfectly legal. We are not a political organisation, so we don't have to declare any funds to anybody. So don't worry about any of that kind of nonsense. We are simply under the Database Act, which means that we keep all your details completely private, and that's all that we'll ever do. Somebody there saying, keep telling it as it is, Alistair. Proud unionist, need someone to speak out and get our United Kingdom back together and on the right track. Well, that's absolutely, thank you for that comment, and that's the job of our politicians. And we need our politicians to speak out and not to go along with complete and utter nonsense and lies and things that are based upon lies and things that are just not true and false ideologies and things like that. And we know very well how false ideologies can end up becoming staples and pillars of society. But at the same time, if you see it as a false ideology, you have a requirement to at least do what you can to not go along with it. And if you're in a position where you can say something, please do. And you'll find quite good speakers about these things on the internet as well. And I know Brendan O'Neill's making some good points today. I noticed in an article that he wrote for Spiked Online. So, absolutely, do please get in touch with us, because we are going to be back on the streets as soon as this is allowed. And if we have to wear face masks, I do have an incredible face mask, which I hope it will never come to it, but I will show it to you one day. My face mask of my unionist face mask, but it would scare the little children, I have to say, so maybe I won't wear it outside. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, folks, it's 2:00. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you've had some kind of value from this. I hope you've learned that you're not alone and that right will prevail. And we're being massively provoked at the moment, but we keep our nerve, we see through the lies, and we keep standing strong for the United Kingdom. Thanks, says Patriots Awake. See you next week. Thank you so much for watching. Singapore says, well done. And I'm going to say what I always say at the end of all of these broadcasts. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen.